When a person deep in the Taklamakan desert is so thirsty that he cuts his own vein with a knife to suck the nearly coagulating blood, what exactly does he see, the black hole of death, or the glimmer of civilization? This Swede named Sven Hedin lay on the scorching dunes, his camels reduced to dry bones and his companions vanishing one after another into the wind and sand. Tonight, let us listen to the soft glow of the fire and follow this unforgettable tale into the true story of his life. He was hailed as a European hero, respected alike by Hitler and the King of Sweden. Yet he was also a lonely wanderer who lingered in Lapner for half his life, nearly weathering himself into a fossil. He uncovered the lost ancient city of Loulan, awakening the long-buried civilization of Jingjue from its thousand-year slumber. What he took away was not merely exquisite relics and Buddha statues, but also the last trace of dignity belonging to the western regions. To the world, he was a master tactician balancing power, science, and the wilderness. Only he himself knew how his desperate thirst for water in the desert stripped away all his masks to the world. In the spring of 1895, Sven Hedin marched into the Taklamakan, known as the Sea of Death, driven by an almost pathological stubbornness. It marked the first great fracture of his life, the rite of passage that transformed him from a noble apprentice into a lone wolf of the wilderness. At that time, he underestimated the raw power of this land, naively believing that a compass and sheer will could conquer any sand dune. The desert soon humbled his arrogance. Water supplies ran dry due to miscalculation, and the blazing sun pressed down like a scorching branding iron upon the expedition. In his darkest hour, he watched his guide driven mad by hallucinations, shoveling dry sand into his mouth and letting out bestial wails. Sven Hedin wrote in his diary, "At that moment, I heard mocking laughter rising from deep within the earth, the judgment of nature upon human greed." To survive, he abandoned expensive instruments and all provisions. Clad only in a thin suit, he crawled mechanically across the moonlit sea of sand, until he spotted a cluster of green reeds, the last gift of the Darim River. He collapsed onto the muddy bank, burying his face in the murky water as if returning to his mother's womb. This narrow escape did not fill him with fear. Instead, it felt like a strange coronation. He believed his life now belonged entirely to the desolate wilderness. One afternoon in 1900, amid blinding sandstorms, Sven Hedin stumbled by chance upon the sealed gates of Loulan that had remained closed for 1,000 years. He had only sent his assistant to retrieve a lost shovel, yet the man returned bearing wooden slips carved with mysterious ancient characters. Sven Hedin instantly sensed an ancient aura, a scent of civilization sealed perfectly by dry air since the Eastern Han and Jin dynasties. He recorded his first sight of Loulan in his diary. Upon sand-covered terraces, the Buddhist stupa still stood. The wooden frames of houses jutted pale into the sky like the bones of the dead. Half intruder in a dream, half devout pilgrim, he began feverishly excavating the silent ruins. One precious wooden slip after another emerged, inscribed with clear Han characters telling of frontier soldiers' nostalgia and merchants longing along the Silk Road 2,000 years prior. Yet beneath this discovery lay intense political sensitivity and tangled power struggles. He realized he was touching the powder keg known as China's western regions. The Qing dynasty was already crumbling, while forces from all corners lurked in these remote wastelands, coveting the lost treasures. As Sven Hedin sorted the relics, his heart was torn. He longed to bring them back to Sweden for the world to admire, yet he vaguely sensed he was disturbing an ancient peace meant to remain undisturbed. Sven Hedin's name spread across European headlines and the banquets of nobles, yet his heart remained bound to the unpredictable lands of the western regions. In the years that followed, he moved beyond simple scientific exploration and stepped into the geopolitical center known as the Great Game. He secretly crossed Tibet, disguising himself as a Mongolian lama to evade Qing dynasty blockades. In freezing mountain passes 40 degrees below zero, he even slaughtered his own horses for warmth. He exchanged confidential letters with King Oscar II of Sweden while accepting covert funding from Tsarist Russia and Germany. He grew increasingly like a politician walking a tightrope, using science to cloak his exploratory ambitions and trading discoveries for political leverage. At the height of his fame, he returned to Stockholm to a hero's welcome. Yet late at night, alone in his mansion, he stared silently at the Loulan artifacts. Though he had gained fame and fortune, his soul still lingered in the cold, hungry, yet pure solitude of Lapner. He felt out of place among high society banquets, already accustomed to the scent of camels and the rough texture of sand. This inner division drove him to embark on one final, grandest expedition, the Sino-Swedish scientific expedition, this time facing far more complex circumstances. In 1927, already in his 60s, Sven Hedin set foot on Chinese soil once more. No longer a lone explorer, he led a massive expedition as its spiritual core. China was then torn by warlord chaos, and rising nationalistic sentiment made Sven Hedin realize the era of freely removing cultural relics was gone forever. He displayed remarkable political wisdom, reaching an equal agreement with Chinese scholars that all excavated relics would remain within China. The decision sparked outrage among Western explorers, who mocked him as a traitor. Yet he wrote in his diary, "I love this land more than I love these lifeless stones." Crossing the border between Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang, the expedition faced harsh suppression from local warlords and was once detained and threatened. Seated in a crude military tent, facing armed soldiers, Sven Hedin remained calm and composed, smoking leisurely and negotiating fluently in Chinese. In these moments, he embodied the aura of a tragic hero, striving to uphold scientific dignity amid a crumbling old order. Dark clouds loomed from abroad as well. His connections within Germany plunged him into controversy in his later years. He fought not only against the desert but also against the chaotic darkness creeping toward the outbreak of the Second World War. Sven Hedin spent his later years entangled in controversy and nostalgia, his life like an epic written yet never fully signed. He attempted to use his close ties with Nazi high officials, especially Hitler, to rescue Jewish friends and scholars imprisoned in concentration camps. His actions placed him in a moral gray zone, condemned by some as a Nazi sympathizer, yet undeniably saving countless lives. His eyesight faded severely in old age, yet he persisted daily in dictating his memoirs. Often in the afternoon sunlight, he would trace the imagined course of the Darim River in the air, as if the river still flowed beneath his palms. He came to understand his lifelong pursuit was not merely geographical discovery, but an extreme search for self-existence. When he recalled his companions who perished in Lapner, overwhelming guilt washed over him like a tide. No longer the bold hero of his youth, he became an ordinary old man sifting through broken memories amid the ruins of time. He wrote to his family, "My life has been like drawing a circle in the desert. No matter how far I wander, I always return to where I began." In the deep winter of 1952, Sven Hedin passed away peacefully in Stockholm at the age of 87. By the time of his death, Loulan was once again buried beneath drifting sand, as if the prosperous ruins had been nothing but his endless dream. He finally answered the question posed at the beginning: what did he see on the brink of death? Perhaps he witnessed the insignificance of human civilization against the vast universe, and within that insignificance, the unyielding light of ordinary humanity. He left behind millions of written words, intricate maps, and a permanent redefinition of the Western regions. Though his political choices drew criticism, no one could deny that it was he who returned the history erased by wind and sand back to humanity. Now, as the fire dims into the night, can you hear the endless ringing of camel bells echoing from distant Lapner? Do not dwell on the fate of the treasures. For Sven Hedin himself is the most mysterious cultural legacy left by his era. The world is vast, civilizations ancient, and human life fleeting. May you find your own peace within his story. Sleep now. The winds of Lapner have fallen silent. Good night.